Hey everybody, this is Colton with Draw Anime Academy. This is actually a course that I recorded a while back for free online, and I decided that I was going to go ahead and put it up on our YouTube channel because I thought it was pretty cool. It's kind of chaotic, and I had to go really fast because there was a 2-hour limit to the length that we were allowed to put up. You might hear me say that a couple times throughout. I think the course is pretty good overall, so go ahead and let me know what you think in the comments. If you like it, if you want to see more like this, I'm totally open to creating a beginner's fundamentals series or going more in depth on any of these subjects. So go ahead and let me know, and we will get right into the video. Okay, so we got a lot to cover in a short amount of time, so I'm just going to jump right into it. We're going to start off with 1-point perspective. There's two things that you need to know about 1-point perspective. The first one is horizon line. This is your eye level. This is your head height. If there's people that are standing, their heads are going to be, and they're your same height, their heads are going to be on the horizon line like this, even if they're way down there, right? Or if you're I don't know, in an airplane, the horizon line is, there's going to be clouds intersecting it, maybe like that. The second thing, so one is horizon line, two is a vanishing point. A vanishing point is basically the point at which something gets so far away that you can no longer see it. And these lines are just a representation of that distance going back in space. So a plane would look like this, and I'm going to draw this fast because I don't have a lot of time here in this free course, but we're going to try to get through as much as we can. This is a box. This side of the box, the side is going away from us, and this point in the distance is the point at which the box gets so far away that we can no longer see it. We can do this with the ground as well. Here is the top of a box. We can do this with something above us as well. Here is this right here. And this is 1-point perspective. There is one vanishing point in 1-point perspective. It gets far away and you can't see it anymore. And that's 1-point perspective. Go ahead and try it. Drop in a horizon line, drop in a vanishing point, pull a couple of lines out. You can start with the side, you can start with the top, you can start with the bottom. Does not matter, right? Here we go. If I want to build a room, I can just pull a couple of lines out. Like if I'm inside of a room or something, I can pull some lines out. I can connect all of these up like this. Get rid of this one, right? I can pull this out even more. Pull this across, pull this up, pull this out and over. And now here is the inside of a room. There we go. Here's the inside of a room. I could add furniture to it. I could add a carpet in the middle like this, right? Here's a carpet. Couch over here against the wall. The scale's going to be wrong. Again, I want to cover a lot in this very short course. There's a limit to how long free courses can be, so I'm trying to pack as much in here as I can, right? Here's a couch. Well, it wouldn't be like that. It would be like this, right? So go ahead and try it yourself, right? You can hang a light from the top. You can put all kinds of stuff in there. You can put a picture on the wall. These lines will all be going back to your vanishing point. These lines are horizontal. These lines are perfectly vertical. And that is the 1-point perspective lecture. Let's move on to the homework. For your homework, you're going to do 1-point scenes. I want you to build some frames like this. So let's just say home work. Let's have you build a couple of scenes. Let's just say four scenes, boom, like that. Put a couple horizon lines in. 1, 2, 3, wherever. Who cares where they are? Put some vanishing points. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't expect you to be able to follow along live with me, but again, super short course, right? You can put some stuff in here. You can pull this out, pull this over, start making some scenes. Boom, like that. Let's have one up here. Boom, we got that. Right? So each of these scenes I want you to populate with boxes, and I really want you to do, I don't know, 5 to 10 boxes per scene. So it looks something like this. You can make scenes out of it. You could make a road, you could make whatever you want, buildings, all that kind of thing. 5 to 10 boxes per scene, 5 to 10 per scene. Times 4 scenes. Okay, that is your homework for this course, and I will see you in the 2-point perspective lecture. Okay, 2-point perspective. Here we go. 2-point perspective is like 1-point perspective. You're going to have a horizon line. The only difference is that instead of 1 vanishing point, you will have 2. So whereas your vertical and horizontal lines were perfectly up and down and perfectly left and right, in this case, your horizontal lines will be pointing towards a second vanishing point instead. So you're going to fan out lines from your vanishing points like this, and then you're going to pull up, more fanned out lines, more fanned out lines, pull up, more fanned out lines, more fanned out lines. And here is your first 2-point perspective box, just like this. Couple things to keep in mind. There's an angle right here. This angle right here, you do not want it to get less than 90 degrees. So 90 degrees, like that, I think, is good. So greater... No, 90 degrees is greater than... No, you don't want this. So if 90 degrees is greater than your angle, bad. 90 degrees is less than your angle, good. So for example, if I go way down here, like this, and this angle starts to get less than 90 degrees, I do not want my box right there. This is starting to get into heavy distortion because perspective, linear perspective where you're using lines has limitations. It's really just a bad simplification of how real life works, right? So this angle right here, I don't want this. So linear perspective has some limitations. You do not want to get out of this thing called the cone of vision, and it's basically a circle that is what you can see. And if you get too close to the edge of the circle, I think it goes about like right here. If you get too close to the edge of circle, you start getting this crazy distortion, and that's when you start getting boxes where the edge looks like this, and you don't want that kind of thing because it's bad. So just be careful of crazy angles. That's really the only thing to keep in mind with this. The rest, you just do a bunch of boxes. So let's do some more. You can go above and below your horizon line like this. Put a box in there like that. Remember, pointing back towards your vanishing point. Right? We can put some more around here. And as long as none of these are getting over 90 degrees, or under 90 degrees, then you should be fine. So that is 2-point perspective. I like to do this without really thinking about my vanishing points. I just think I can drop in my first line, and I'm going to be fanning out from an origin over here. So that will determine my convergence. So I just do that, fanning, drop in another line, make it slightly more tilted down this way than that line, and that has set my perspective. Now I can divide any of these in half that I want, and my perspective is generally going to be okay. This is how you do something like drawing props or a building or something. And then this one is fanning as well. This one, fanning as well. Come on. Like that. You can draw a box. Get the middle. You could draw a roof on this if you want. See, this line's going to almost be parallel with this one. Bring that back. Down. Out. Out. And you can start drawing buildings and stuff that way. See? Little house. So anyways, let's talk about the homework. We're going to get into more of that stuff in a little bit later. So let's talk about the homework. Actually, I'll leave that there. New layer. Homework. Same as last time. So you're going to make 4 different scenes. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to do 2-point perspective. instead this time. So 4 2-point scenes with 5 to 10 boxes each. All right. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Your horizon line doesn't have to be inside of your frame, by the way, but I'm just sticking in for convenience. So another thing, generally with 2-point perspective, your vanishing points usually will not both be inside of your frame. That creates really extreme perspective and distortion like I was talking about before. In fact, a lot of the time, your frame will look like this, and your vanishing points will be way over here and way over there. Now you see why you might start seeing why I like to just do this sort of thing. I don't even know where my vanishing points are. I just know that this is generally the rate of my convergence, right? Like there's a plane with some convergence. Here's a plane with a bit more convergence. So I'm just thinking about a line A and B and how fast they come towards each other. And then line C and D and how fast they come towards each other. See, A and B. So let's just do this. Number 1, number 2, A, B. Okay. A and B on number 2 are coming together slower than A and B on number 1. That's my camera that I'm thinking about. That's my convergence. So keep those sort of things in mind. Do a lot of these kind of scenes and you will get a feel for it, and it'll start to be so natural that you'll just be able to bang out boxes and draw them without any problem, just all the time. And you'll be able to mess with your perspective and be like, okay, there's this, there's that, and then you can start making houses and everything really easily. But you want to do the homework because that's what's going to get you a feel for it. You do it a bunch of times more strictly, and then you'll get more loose and free with it. So for example, this piece, this shot down here, your vanishing points are going to be really quite far from each other. And then this is going to go back, and that's going to go back. And this is actually what your box would look like at the end of this. So now if I compare that to, let's shrink this, put it up here. Come on. There we go. If I compare that to another scene where my vanishing points are actually quite close together. This is a really long frame for some reason, whatever. Okay, vanishing point, see how much closer they are. Now watch. I'll basically draw that same box here. You'll see that these lines are converging, meaning coming together, much faster than the ones on top. So A, B, A's lines are coming together slower than B. Now, that just means that you're standing closer to box B, and you're looking at it through a wider lens. Here's your camera. Here's camera A, camera B. Camera A is here, and here's your box. Camera B is here, and here's that same box. Check this distance. That's what we're doing. We're looking at box. We're looking at box A from further away, but through a more narrow lens. We're looking at box B from closer through a wider lens, and that's why these come together faster. That's generally what I mean when I talk about camera. So mess with your 4 scenes, put a vanishing point here and put a vanishing point here, put a vanishing point here, put a vanishing point here, put a vanishing point maybe super far away, like way over here, and then super far away maybe over there, or maybe just right here, right? So you can get a box that looks like that. And just start experimenting. And then when you get enough experience under your belt, all you really need to think about is just the box. So you can go, oh, okay, I'm going to make a box that's like that. So I'll go, yeah, that feels about right. Oh, let's make it a house. Okay, house, house, boom, just like that, right? There's your vanishing point, There's your doorway. There's a chimney. There's a smoke. So, window, window. I know these are going towards that vanishing point. So you can start understanding that in 2-point perspective. So 4 2-point scenes, 5 to 10 boxes each. Let's move on to the next lecture. So you may say, but Colton, what if I want to look up at an object? Or what if I want to look down at an object and want it to look like really cool? So how do I do that? Well, that's why 3-point perspective exists. And I'll give you an example of what that looks like. You got maybe a box like this, and you're looking way up at it, right? Or the same thing exactly. You got a box, and you're looking down at it, and it gets really far away. So that would be 3-point perspective. And now I'm going to explain how that works exactly. So you got your vanishing points and your horizon line. So here's your horizon line. Now, if this is the horizon and your sun is right here, and you got your clouds and stuff, and you got your water and your sail boat, whatever. But there's something really high in the sky, a floating box. That's crazy, all right? So there's a floating box up here, and you want it to look like that. You're looking up at it, right? Now get rid of all this. Boom, here's your frame. That's exactly what 3-point perspective is for. Same thing here. Oh, there's a crazy box underwater. Look. Boom, right? Get rid of this. Here's your frame. 3-point perspective. That's why you use 3-point perspective, okay? You're looking up at something, you're looking down at something, and 2-point perspective just doesn't cut it. That is why you use 3-point perspective. And I'm actually going to go into some common problems with 3-point perspective that I see constantly. One of them is, this is exaggerated. This, your vanishing points on your left and right are like this. Not really, more like that. And then it's like, oh, I'm going to put a vanishing point down here. Boom, somewhere down there. Now, this box is breaking over the horizon line. And with the way that perspective works is, imagine you're standing on a building. Here you are. There's a big building in front of you, like this. And you're looking straight at this building. So take this measurement, right? Boom. Now, take this measurement. Boom. Take this measurement. Boom. What's the shortest? A, B, or C? Well, B is obviously the shortest measurement. So in perspective, when things are closer, they're visually larger, right? Someone who's super close to you looks much bigger than someone who's far away, right? You have a person right here, and then you have a person further away. Visually, this person's way bigger. Well, that's because you get smaller as you get further away in the vision, right? If you put this into a scene, boom, there we go, horizon line, okay? So how on earth would the top of this box get bigger if it's getting further away? It wouldn't. That's one of the limitations of linear perspective, is this can only go in a straight line. So in like a computer or a digital art or something, this can only say, oh, get bigger as it gets further away. So what would end up happening is you'd go into another thing called a fisheye lens. Now you're going to look, and that's why you get pictures that look like this. Here's your building like that, right? Here's the windows like that. This is a terrible drawing. Hold on. Boom. No. Boom. Boom. There we go. And then vanishing point up here. Vanishing point over here. Vanishing point over here. Wait a second. 1? 4? 4 vanishing points? And if this box was facing us instead, that would have 5 vanishing points. Well, guess what? Curvilinear perspective, a fisheye lens, is also known as 5-point perspective. So 3-point perspective is another bad simplification of the real world. Now that's totally fine, because all we have to know is how to use it, how to use the 3-point perspective within what we want to do. So, for example, you're looking at this. For example, you're looking at this 3-point perspective. Looking at straight, where you can see the horizon line, because remember, your horizon line's your headline. That's where your camera is. Now, this would start to get 1-point perspective. If you're off at an angle, 2-point perspective. If you're looking up or you're looking down, 3-point perspective. I'm not going to cover 5-point perspective in this course. I don't have enough time, but I did want to explain the basics of how it works. So you would not get this sort of thing happening. You would only get 3-point perspective that feels good down like here, like this kind of thing, right? That feels much better, all right? So then you would get vanishing point 1, vanishing point 2, and then down here, vanishing point 3, 3-point perspective. Moving on, let's go to the homework. Okay, so homework, you're going to make 4 more scenes. You might want to make each of these its own page. Sorry, you might waste paper, random space. Just draw faces and anime stuff in the side. You're fine. Okay. Horizon line. Zoop. Zoop. Right? Zoop. Zoop. Now this is kind of looking weird, isn't it? Here we go. Maybe we can cut that off there. These lines are tilted in. This line is tilted in. This goes all the way down, somewhere down here. Pretty accurate. Then you can add more boxes. Add more boxes. Another very common student problem of 3-point perspective is not putting your vanishing points far enough away. Students will get very comfortable with pulling their lines out of the vanishing point, and obviously you're not going to pull a line all the way across your entire table because it gets like, ooh, like that, okay? So get used to simplifying and kind of guesstimating it, and as long as your convergence, like what I talked about earlier, is pretty consistent, it should look okay. Don't worry, you'll get better in time. So you're going to do 4 3-point scenes with 5 to 10 boxes each. All right, let's do one more really quick. Let's look up, okay? So can do something like this. Remember, it's going to be fanning out. That's actually pretty bad. Let's do this. It's going to be fanning out, right? This one going back towards that vanishing point. Right, you can have, and then this basically establishes all of your perspective. If you want, you can put another box in front of this one. I don't want a tangency. I'm going to avoid this edge right here. See? More boxes. And just practice this a bit. Your first vanishing point is going to be, you know, this is actually a tilted horizon. My horizon line's kind of angled, but perspective works the same, right? Just pretend your canvas is turned like that if you want to tilt the horizon. Tilted horizons generally make it a little bit more dynamic is all. So, you know, 5 boxes or whatever, 10 boxes in a scene, right? Like that. So I want you to do 4 3-point scenes, 10 boxes, 5 to 10 boxes each, and then that is the 3-point perspective lecture. I will see you in the next lecture. So let's talk about draw through. Draw through is one of the most important things when it comes to industrial design and making sure your perspective looks good. So what is draw through? Well, I will explain it visually. We have a box like this, 2-point perspective, maybe tiny bit 3-point, right? Here is a box, but wait, boom, boom. Oh, I can see the back corners. It's like see-through. That is draw through. You are drawing through your object to the back. We add a little bit of line weight in here. And all of a sudden, we have a draw-through cube. Why is this important? I will tell you why it's important. Because you can see through it to make sure it's correct on the other side as well. So, for example, I divide, that was bad, I divide this in half. Here's the halfway point of this. By the way, this is called perspective dividing. It is when you take a shape and you draw an X through it. I cannot draw. That's okay, whatever. I'm using the straight line tool. That's not the straight line tool. I'm using the straight line tool. And you find the center of it. And then this gives you the center, which means that you can use that to draw a roof. You can use it to divide this into fourths. You can do all kinds of stuff with it. You can divide it again and find the middle of this. You can divide it again and find the middle of this. You can draw a roof on this one now. There's so much that you can do with perspective dividing. You can take this, erase this out, cut a chunk off of that. You can start cutting this apart, right? You can take this down here. You can take this out here like this. See, I'm starting to build all these shapes out of this single shape, right? I could take this entire thing out, right? Now I have basically built this crazy looking shape like this, and it has been equally divided up and all that. And you may think, oh, that's not that interesting. Well, it works the same way in perspective. If you have a plane in perspective like this and you divide it up, I'm just going to use a straight line tool for speed. You divide it up like this. You can divide it up like this. Well, you can do the same exact thing in perspective on three-dimensional objects. And this can really start to expand the number of things you're building, because, say, if you wanted to build a chair or a couch or something other than just a box, then you would actually be able to do that, right? So you could bring this down there, you could bring this up there, and then that could be like a box with a slant in it or something. So bring this up using draw through, right? Using our vanishing point back there, you can pull this back, pull this up. There's that, and then all you do is just connect that up, connect that up. Do I want to put a chimney on the other side? Sure, I can. I do this, that, that, that. There's where the chimney comes out. Here's the chimney on top. Might see just a sliver of that. Here's the chimney on the bottom, right? I just use draw through to put that chimney on the back, and now I know where it is. So if I wanted to, I don't even know, if I wanted to build a symmetrical chimney on the other side, I could drag that over and drag this over, and I'd be able to do it. So here's that point. Here's that point. There's that point, right? That's the back. Here's this point. Here's this point. Drag this up. Drag that over. And it gets a little bit messy at times, and that's why you kind of really use your line weight to make sure you can see things properly. But boom, symmetrical chimneys on each side of the roof using draw through. So what I did was I just followed this up. If I have a point right here on the roof, I follow it up to the top in perspective, and I pull this across like, that's bad, like this, and then I can follow it back down the roof. Now I'm just going along this line and this line back here. I follow it down the roof, and boom, right there. So I can create that plane on the roof, and then if I use my line weight wisely, I have just stuck a plane on this roof. And now this is going to get crazy. Okay, let's just do this. I can pull this back. I can pull this back, pull it up, pull this back. Right? I'm just going to erase these dual chimneys, whatever. right? Pull this back, pull this over, right? And now watch this. Pull that back, pull that up. That's actually not quite in the middle. Looks like there's this. If I want to find the middle of this part back here, I can just create an extra plane here, and then I can divide it in half like this, and boom, that's the half. And then this will connect, and then that will connect back there. And then I can just erase my construction, right? So that's how I would do draw through in order to make a house. And I might actually have a little bit of errors in here. Don't pay attention to that stuff. But the principle is the same essentially. So, right, I want to build a door. I can do this, go down to there. There's a double door. I want to build windows. So let's say I wanted to put windows on this, but I wanted them evenly spaced. Let's use a straight line tool this time. Okay, so perspective. If I want to get these windows, I can draw line, line. I'm using the straight line tool just because it's more accurate. So let's just say this is a window. Zoom in. Come down here. Draw an X to divide this in half. Like that. That one's a little bit off. Draw through here. And then if I want, this is A. If I want to mirror A over to B, I will drag a line from the end point here through here to there. And then A and B, in theory, are the same size. So what if I want to jump a gap? How would I do that? Well, I would just decide how far is the gap that I want to jump. And then do that. Drag this down here. Do that. Boom. So now A, and where's my lasso tool? B. So here's A, and here's B. A and B will be the same size because I dragged out from this corner and I dragged out from this corner, and that mirrored A over to B, but I jumped a gap as well. So there's other ways to do this, and I'm not going to get into too much depth, but you can do the same exact thing in perspective. So this probably won't be completely accurate because I'm kind of trying to do this really fast, but here's a window right here. You would basically find the center of this and pull it back to the vanishing point in perspective. Now, if I wanted another window that's the same size, I would do this, and I would do, no, I wouldn't do that. I would do this like that. But if I wanted to jump a specific gap, well, actually, this would be A, and this would be B, or rather B and A. But if I want to jump a gap, then I'll just choose a dot like that, pull this through, pull that through, and I have my new window over here. I'm on the wrong brush, press the button. So there's a window right there. There's a window right there. Boom, right? So window is A and B. And then if I had wanted to put them in the right spot, I would divide that in half, and I would have actually found the middle. But so anyways, that's how you would construct and do a building and start to use draw through. And now you can use this with curves too. So let's set up a little perspective. So here is a plane in perspective, and let's say that I want to have a curve like this, and I'm actually wanting to build like a speed form or something. So here's this, and then what I can do is I can make this, make sure it's the same length on the other side by bringing it over. I don't really want to spend the time to do that. I guess I can a little bit. Bring this over like that. Bring this through that point, bring this down like that. Now A and B are the same size, and then I can bring this back like that. And then if I want to add, say, a curve like this, then you would basically find a point here, find that same point on the other side by bringing it over like this. There's that point. You can find this point here, like right about there, and then this would come out like that. So you're basically plotting. This is called plotting, and you basically find the halfway point. I'm just going to guesstimate it for speed. You find a line, you drag it over, you find this, you find the center of this, and you go through that whole process again. And then you find the middle of this right there. You drag it over and through, and you plot the point down. And you do that for every single point, and then you just connect the dots like that. So that's how plotting works. And now there's like shortcut kind of ways to do it as well. So I kind of missed here. It would more be like that. And then what you can do is you can find a point where maybe this line crosses, and then you can cross that over, and it would basically be right there. And then you connect those 2 points up like that. Though I kind of missed because it's drawing it small, but the process is still the same. So you would get that, and then it would come down like that. And all you're doing is doing this in perspective with this. So one way you could do it is drawing ribs. I like doing it this way. It almost looks like how like an airplane is constructed or something, like an airplane wing or whatever. And then you can just draw these ribs down, and then you would do the same thing over here as well, coming up and over like that. You'd plot these points, and then you would connect this all to the back, and it'd basically be like that. And that's how you would construct a speed form. Again, I'm just breezing over this. I'm not really going into detail. I'm really not going into detail or plotting out a lot. I just want to talk about what draw through is used for. There's a book that goes over it pretty well, which is called How to Draw by Scott Robertson. So drawing objects in environments from your imagination or something. It's really good. So that goes over all of that. But in this boot camp, I'm only really talking about the basics. So anyways, that is it for the draw through lecture, and I will see you in the next lecture. Okay, we are jumping right into primitive forms. So primitive forms is what we are going to be building almost everything out of for the rest of this course. And this is really your foundation. If you can draw these forms, you can draw almost anything. So the first thing, we've already covered it a lot, is a box. If you can draw a box, you could draw anything. When is the last time you saw Amazon ship something in a cylindrical container? Probably not very recently. If you can draw a box, this is like the #1 thing you can do. You can honestly rule the world. Number 2, we're going to be talking about a cylinder. A cylinder is a extruded circle in perspective. I don't really know how to say it other than that. It has an ellipse on the top and on the bottom, which is a circle in perspective. An ellipse, there's a lot of math and stuff behind this. I will try to condense it the best I can. Here you are. There's a side view. You are standing on the ground. There is a manhole in the ground. This goes down into the sewers. You are looking down at this circle, but it's in perspective. There's an angle that your eye line makes to this. That is the degree of your ellipse. So let's say this is 40 degrees, probably 40 degrees. A 40-degree ellipse is kind of squished. So a 90-degree is just a circle. A 0-degree is a flat line. You're looking at the cylinder from the side. 90 degrees, you're looking at from the top. 45 degrees, you are looking at it halfway between that. So your cylinder will look like this. I don't know, 10 degrees. You are looking at it at a really shallow angle like this. So that's what your cylinder will look like. 20 degrees. So this is a way to think about how the rotation and everything works. Your ellipse has two axes. Here is your ellipse. It has a minor axis and a major axis. The minor axis is your important one. That will point towards your vanishing point. If I have a horizon line and a vanishing point, and my minor axis is going to point towards my vanishing point, my major axis does not. So say, for example, I have a cylinder coming out like this. It would look like, that's bad, but it is a cylinder at least. Okay? Most common mistakes with an ellipse is two things. One of them I like to call footballing. A-L-L-I-N-G. That is when your ellipse looks like a badly drawn eye. Or a football. How about that? Maybe a football, right? Pinch, bad. The next is called hot dogging, and usually this is a beginner's problem with drawing fingers, where all the fingers look like this, but on ellipses, some people draw them like this, and I like putting mustard on it in a bun and eating it. So you don't want to do that. A good ellipse is going to be symmetrical on both sides. You're going to wrap around, and the corners are going to not squish, but they're going to come around. It's a circle squish. So if I go ahead in here, and I do this, and I do that, and I make a stroke, and I do that, here is a perfect circle. I'm going to come in here and I'm going to squish this. Notice how the the sides of this ellipse wrap around. They curve. They do not come into a point. They do not turn into a hot dog. And when you're drawing ellipses, it's one motion. So you go like that. I'm not warmed up at all today, but you draw ellipses like that. That's bad too. What the heck? Okay, there. That's a good ellipse. Look at that. So symmetrical. This points towards your vanishing point. So that is the secret to drawing ellipses, and the cylinder part just basically pops out. So I'm going to take all this stuff and I'm just going to cut it. And I'm going to turn it off, and we're moving on to our next primitive form, which is a cone. So a cone is a pointed cylinder, basically. It's a cylinder that comes together at the top and gets pointed. So nothing too crazy about it. We'll talk about this a little bit more when we render it, but the bottom is an ellipse and the top comes to a point, and it's actually quite an easy shape to draw. The next one is a rectangular prism or a triangular prism. I don't remember. It will look like this. This is a triangular prism, right? Or rectangular prism. I don't remember. It's one of those two. So this is really important. It is like a triangle extruded. Okay, the next one is, so we've got a box, a cylinder, a cone, a triangular prism. We will be drawing a sphere. So the next one is a sphere. And in line work, it really just looks like a circle. I like to put a little cap on it to show the top and wrap a little form around it when I'm drawing it, just because it shows that volume. We'll talk about this more when we're rendering. I am so sorry. I forgot a form. I'm coming in here after the fact. See, there's the last one. And I'm drawing a pyramid. That's another form that we really want to pay attention to. So it's really just the same thing as a cone, except instead of starting from a circle, you're starting from a square or rectangle. So a pyramid is actually the second to last form. So anyways, back to the normal lecture. And the last one, which is one that I learned from one of my teachers, is a ribbon. Now a ribbon is awesome because you can basically show three-dimensional space like in a strip. So there is a ribbon, and we'll talk about ribbons a little bit later as well during rendering, but these are our main shapes, forms that we're going to be working with. So anyways, we are going to get into lighting and rendering in the next section in case, unless I forgot something, and then that'll be the next lecture. Okay, we will see you then. So there are a couple things that you should know about light before we go ahead and get starting and rendering all these primitive forms that we talked about in the last lecture. The first thing about light is that light travels in a straight line. So it comes out of a source that emits light, and it travels in a straight line from that object. So that means if there's something in the way, then that object will cast a shadow, and that shadow will fall on maybe an object behind that. So it will be like that. Okay? So light travels in a straight line. That's number one. So I'll just come in here and I'll just say straight line. Number two, light has intensity fall off, which means that the further you get from a light, the weaker the light is. This varies on your light. Like the sun has a really far intensity fall off, but a candle would have a really fast intensity fall off. So which means like this operates off of a sort of principle that I think it's called like the inverse square law or something, which basically means that it gets exponentially weaker as you get further away from it. But we're not going to be going into all that stuff. Just remember that light gets weaker over distance. So weaker over distance. Okay. Number three, light can have color. So that will affect the color of your object. So if you have like a blue light, a cool light, then it'll have warm shadows. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the color theory section. But basically, light can have color. Can be colored. Okay. Number four, light bounces. In fact, these should probably be reversed. But anyways, bounces. Which means if you have a light source and you have maybe like a white panel, you have a sphere here, the light will hit this sphere, but it'll also hit this panel, and it'll bounce up and light the bottom of this. So you'll end up getting a sort of thing that looks like probably like this sort of thing. You'll have a core shadow, and again, we'll talk about this more when you have your lighting section, your rendering your primitive form section. Okay, so versus like something that would be like, here's your sphere, and why did I draw it like that? The core shadow would be perpendicular to the light, sorry. And then you'd have this bounce coming in like that, whereas this one, you wouldn't have it. This is why objects, the shadow of things, are pitch black in space, because there's no bounce light. So the shadowed side, assuming that there's nothing around this object at all except blackness, the shadow would actually be like pitch black. But that's really only in special cases. So you would get bounce light in here if there was a panel that light bounced off of. And then another thing is light bounces at different intensities depending on your local value of what it's bouncing off of. So that was a mouthful. What does that mean? It means that more light will bounce off of a white object than a black object. So if this is a really dark object and there's a light hitting, let's use red for the first time. If there's light coming in and bouncing off like this, that will be much more intense than light bouncing off of this. And bounce light will actually take the color of whatever it is bouncing off of as well. So that is really important for making realistic renderings and scenes. So number 5, I'm just going to talk about ambient occlusion a little bit. Ambient occlusion. You'll hear it referred to occlusion shadows. You'll hear it referred to as AO in 3D programs and stuff. But anyways, that basically just means that if I have a panel right here and maybe a panel right here, and there's light going in like this, the light will bounce around and it'll get darker less light will be able to come in, and it bounces around and it doesn't escape. So basically, that's why cracks exist. That's why like things get dark in corners, is because here's a side view. The light will come in and it'll bounce around and it won't escape. So this will be the darkest area. And ambient occlusion tends to happen underneath of objects like boxes and chairs and different objects that like when they come together, and that can add a lot of realism to your scene. So anyways, that is it for the principles of light principles. And in the next lecture, we're actually going to get right into rendering some objects and talking about stuff like half to black, and that'll be really fun. So I will see you in that next lecture. Okay, we're going to get started on this because look at all these objects that we have to render. There's literally 7 things. So first thing, half to black. What is that? Okay, we've got a value scale, 1 to 10, which means white to black, okay? White is, let's just say that's our value scale, okay? 10 being black, 1 being white. 1, 10, 5. Okay? That's a bad 5. There we go. So half to black is basically a starting point kind of principle in rendering. They used to use it in like industrial design when they were rendering with Copics. They would have markers that were labeled 1 through 10, and you would it's like a mathematical formula that you can kind of use to render objects. And it's for like matte surface, and it's assuming you're basically in direct sunlight. So half to black is whatever the local value of your object, your shadowed side is going to be halfway between that and black. So this is not a very good value scale, by the way. This is like, it's basically black all the way down, but for the sake of this demonstration, that's okay. So halfway between, actually no, I'm going to fix this. I'm sorry. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to go up halfway. No. There we go. So this is your value scale. 5, 10, black at the bottom, white at the top. So let's just say that our cube is a, let's just say it's a 5, right? So our cube is a 5. Halfway to black is right here. So my lit side is going to be this value, and my shadowed side is going to be this value, and then halfway between that is going to be my secondary side. So let's go ahead and put that formula in this box. I'm going to fill this box with the local value, which is that number 5 value. Now let's figure out where our light source is coming from. Let's just say it's coming from sort of the front, like this. I want to get a light source that lights, that has one side that's primarily being hit, which is this side A, one side that is, so one side that's partially being hit by light, 2, and one side that is not being hit by light, 3. Now let's go in here, and this is our half to black value. So that is this value right here. Fill it. That's my shadowed side. My second side, which would be the top, is going to be this middle value between those two. I'm going to fill this in. 2, 3. So now if I turn my lines off, that is my cube. This is the basic values. This is my starting point with these. And then, of course, after this, I'm going to do stuff like add the ambient occlusion on the bottom. I'm going to soften the transitions of these edges. But for the most part, this is a really great starting point. I'm just choosing a value halfway between these two sides. I'll choose a value. Actually, this would be a little bit brighter because this is coming in and it would basically hit this corner perfectly. So I'm probably actually going to lighten this corner a little bit, and then I'll put just a little bit of a highlight on it like that. And that'll look pretty good. I'm going to come in here, soften these corners just a little bit so they're not so hard. And that is my first rendered cube. And it actually looks pretty good so far, which is really awesome. Okay, so I'm going to add the shadow. I'm going to make another layer. I'm going to put it below. Now, light travels in a straight line. So I'm going to take this angle of lighting, and I'm going to hit it on each of the corners. Put this on top. I'm going to hit this on each of the corners of this box like that. And then my direction of my light, which is this. So there's the angle that it's coming in at, and then there's the angle that it's traveling on the ground. So if there's like a piece of paper or something on the ground, what direction is this traveling on the piece of paper, right? So I'm going to get a triangle off of each of these sides. This one's in the back, so I'll just keep that low opacity. So this is the direction. So I'm going to take this angle and pull it off of this side. It's basically just perfectly horizontal. I got kind of lucky. Do that. Pull it off of this side as well, right there. Pull it off of using draw through. Pull it off of this side. Boom, right there. I'm going to connect the dots here. Connect, 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 connect. I'm going to make a new layer below my paint, and I'm going to choose this background value, which is right here. It's not quite white, and then I'm going to go halfway between white and black, which is 85, and then what is half of 85? 42? I'm just going to choose, say, 42. 42 and a half. Boom, right there. That is my shadow color. I turn this off. And then what I can do is I can start to soften this shadow. It's going to be harder towards the object, and it's going to be softer the further the shadow gets away from the object. So I come in here. Right? I can come in here and just do that. This is not super detailed. I got to zoom through this stuff. And the rest of these objects, by the way, I'm going to go pretty quick on. There is my rendered box. I want to do one more quick box, and I'm just going to kind of cannibalize this first box here. So one more quick box. Here we go. Okay. Zoom into this thing. I'm going to select this with my magic wand tool. This is just because I'm trying to go really fast. Okay, lit side. What do I want my lit side at? Let's do a lighter box. Maybe something like this. Maybe even like white. Let's do a lighter box than the background. Okay, so this is, I don't want to quite do all the way to white. Maybe 96%. So here is my lit side. Halfway between 96 and 0 is 46? 48. It's 48. So that would be my shadowed side. So 48. I'm going to select that. I'm going to fill in my shadowed side just like that. I can choose a value sort of halfway between those two. There we go. What is halfway between those two? So 48 and 96. Let's just color sample this. 48 and 96. Let's just choose something maybe in there. I'm not going to figure out exactly what it is. So here is my second box. All right. Then I'll just choose a little bit brighter of a value and then come in here, and there is that box. I'm going to soften this corner right here. Soften this. Boom. See? Nice light box. This shadow, since it's the same background, is actually going to be exactly the same. So I'm just going to take that and stick it right there. And then I'm going to go ahead and just kind of soften up these corners a little bit. If I can find the right layer. Boom, boom, boom. I don't like this line around it. I'm going to erase that out. Probably not the best way to do this, but whatever. So I can't really see this box that well. So what should I do? Well, I'm going to lighten the top just a little bit. I'm going to lighten this side just a little bit, just because it feels a little bit dark, or like a little bit dark to me. And then I'm going to come back here, and I'm actually going to add a nice dark background behind this. I think that's actually what I want to do. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to choose maybe a nice dark value, and I'm just going to stick that in back here, just because I want something. I want this box to pop out. That's more of like a design thing. So the most important thing to rendering boxes is you want it to read. Read means you can see it. So you want at least a 30 or so ish difference between each of these sides of the box. So this to that, this to this to that. You want a nice 25-30% difference between each of the sides. There's different reads. There's like a 1-3-3 read, a 1-2-3 read, and a 1-1-3 read. So basically, or a 2-2-3. So what I mean by that is a 1-1-3 read would look like this. The top and the side are the same value. A 1-3-3 read would look like this. The 3 side is the same value as the top. A 2-2-3 would look like this. And you can't see the box very easily, especially if I get rid of this. It just doesn't feel quite right. And this can actually happen. Photographers learn about this when they're photographing products to make sure that their objects look good. If you want more information on this, there's a YouTube channel that teaches photography, which talks about these exact same principles of like lighting primitive objects and how to make it look good. The YouTube channel, I always recommend it to my students. It's called The Slanted Lens. The Slanted Lens. Now remember, this is a photography channel. They're not actually painting, but it's the same principle, because painting is all about making something that you can see and that looks good. So anyways, I'm going to zoom past all of this stuff, and we are going to try to organize some of these layers. I want to get this. So I'm just going to take this. I'm going to pull it down, and then we'll just get started. So number 2, rendering cylinders. So cylinders are, you want a core shadow and you want bounce. So there's a couple different things to think about when rendering a cylinder. Let's just go down to, I don't know, let's merge like all of these things here and this one too. So that's just all on one layer. Okay. So local value of my cylinder. What do I want? I will come down here, and I'm just going to go really roughly. I'm going to switch my selection tool to a circle or a ellipse circle tool, and I'm just going to get a really rough selection of this stuff, and I'm going to fill it in. So there is my local value of the cylinder. That is 42% value. Halfway to black is about here. Oops, that's not halfway to black. That's halfway to white. Halfway to black is about here, 21. And then you're going to get a core shadow. So let's figure out exactly where our light source is. I want it coming down like this. You don't have to have this, but you can. So I'm going to put mine right there. This line is going to connect, and where it connects is going to be a line. So it's just like the edge of the cube, except it's the side of the cylinder. And now this side of the cylinder is going to get, I'm just going to nudge this a little bit further so I can make this area bigger than this area, just for design purposes. But I'm just going to take a core, and now I'm going to have a soft transition into that core, and it's going to look like this. A core shadow, there's going to be this soft transition of a shadow, and it's going to go in there. Your core is generally your darkest part of the cylinder. I can even push that just a little bit there. Now we're going to get bounce light. That's going to come in over here, and we're going to bounce. Depending on the material that your cylinder is made out of, depends on how much bounce and reflection you're going to get. But I'm just going to have a little bit right there. The top of my object, I'm going to fill in like that. If I turn the line work off, there is my cylinder. It's still a little bit rough. What I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to put a little highlight on it just to pop out that edge a little bit, or to pop that out. And what you can actually do is put a thing that's called a turning edge on the cylinder, and it's just rendering a little bit on the side over here just to show that rotation like that. Now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to rotate my canvas a bit, and I'm going to put a ambient occlusion underneath of this just to make it kind of sit on the ground nicely. There we go. I'm going to put a little highlight, a little edge right here. And I'm just going to, just to make it look good. There we go. There is our cylinder. It's a little bit messy, but it gets the job done, honestly. There we go. Shadow. It's the same thing as a cube. You're pulling it off of the core shadow like this. So we're going to find this line. Let me just make a new layer below this. You're pulling it off of the core shadow. I actually changed my light just a little bit, but pulling it off of the edge at this same angle. This is going to be a pretty long shadow. Same with the other side. This goes straight across like that. This pulls out, again, that direction on the ground. I'm just going to make it straight like the other one-ish. And then, of course, using your draw through, you have the other side coming straight down. This comes out, same thing. At the end of this, you're going to get basically an ellipse. So you're going to have this sort of thing. The degree of the ellipse will get shallower the steeper the light gets. But anyways, here is our shadow shape. So let's go down here. I'm just going to quickly put this in. Quickly put this in. And then I'm going to choose that same shadow color from above. Boom. Stick it in. Turn this off. There is my shadow. It looks a little bit wonky because I'm doing it really fast. So, and you can kind of adjust it to see what looks better. There we go. Let's erase it as it gets further away, just to give it a little bit of, little bit better of a feel. And then I'm going to lock the transparency, and I'm just going to make it a tad darker as it's closer. I honestly should have done that up there too with the other ones. There we go. There is our cylinder. We have a core shadow. We have a lit side. We have a bounce light side, and that is number 2. So you use the same technique with doing the values, half to black, and all that sort of thing. Let's go on to our next form. Cone. A cone works very similarly to a cylinder, except it gets pinched at the top. The core shadow shrinks towards the top into a point, and towards the bottom, it will start to look more like a cylinder. So let's just do a... what is all this? This is my paint. Okay. So, again, light source, coming down here, right? This is going to have a... Actually, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do a little bit steeper of a light source for this one, maybe right here, because I want to see the shadow of that point. So my light source is like that, and then like that, and then it comes off of the other side and hits that point right there. So this is going to be my shadow right here. I'm doing this in the opposite order. So now we figure out what's my local value of this. I'm going to use the light one. I'm going to fill in this whole thing like this. Choose my half to black, which I'm just going to steal from up here as well. And then you basically just come down in a point, and this gets thicker as you get towards the bottom. So it gets softer. Like that. This side's going to be in shadow. You're also going to have bounce light on that side as well. We can also put a turning edge on this one to show that form turning around like that. Can put a little turning edge on this side. Ambient occlusion below. Like that. And turn this off. Boom. That looks pretty bad, actually. What we can do is we can darken up this side quite a bit. We can wrap this around. Can get this core coming all the way to the bottom. Just cleaning it up is all. There we go. Clean this up a little bit. Clean that up a little bit. Tone down this ambient occlusion. Darken this up in here. I'm really trying to rush through this because I don't have a lot of time. We have a limit of 2 hours for a free course. That's an ellipse. I'm going to erase that out around here. There we go. So that is primitive form number 3. Moving on to the next one quickly. We got a sphere. A sphere is basically going to have a lit side, a shadowed side, a core shadow that wraps around the form. So we're going to choose our local value. Let's say 66. I'm just going to color in this sphere completely. Right? Actually, no. I'm going to use the selection tool, and I'm just going to keep it selected. So sphere, colored in completely. Now your light source, depending on where it's going to come from. So, oops. I just want to make sure that this is all filled in. There we go. My light source, I'm going to go ahead and have come from maybe about this angle. You always want to know the direction that your light's coming from. You're going to get a highlight depending on the reflectivity and everything of your scene. If it's really reflective, you're going to get a nice sharp specular, which means you're actually getting a reflection of the light. Or you're going to get kind of like a diffused kind of look like that. So I'm going to come in here and I'm locking the transparency, and I'm going to go to half to black here, which would be about 33. I'm going to use the angle of this light right here. Right? I'm going to get this line right here, and I'm going to connect it to the sides of my circle, and that is how my core shadow is going to wrap around. And then the degree of the ellipse will depend on how directionally facing the light is towards you or not. So this one's a little bit away, so we're going to be seeing that sort of thing. Let's go back to our 33 value, and let's just drop that core shadow in right there. Right? And I'm going to color this whole thing in. Now I'm going to soften this out like this. And I'm going to be wrapping this around to put some of that turning edge in going away on the other side. So turning that off, it looks like that. The darkest part of your core shadow is going to be in here, and it's basically going to kind of travel down like this. It's not a huge noticeable thing, though. As long as your half to black and everything is generally correct. Now we're going to get bounce from the ground. The ground is going to bounce light up, and you're going to see it right here. So that's what actually makes the core shadow the darkest, is that bounce light canceling out that shadow. And then by the ground, you're going to get some occlusion like this. And I'm just going to do that. I will use my ellipse tool, and I'll basically come down here and trace this light out here to there. Grab this, halfway to black. Fill this in a new layer. Boom. Put a little bit of ambient occlusion down there. Let me lock it. There we go. Unlock. Erase some of this out. Half to black as well. There we go. There is our sphere. Let's turn this off. And that's what our sphere looks like. So what we can actually do is we can come in here and we can just add a turning edge in here as well. This could be light or dark. It just really helps to rotate the form. Like I could have a turning edge in here, but it's actually light. It's not actually super important if it's light or dark. It's more about just, it's almost like adding another side to a box. It just adds a bit more depth to it. So I could add it like that, or I could come in here and rotate that form away like this. And I actually tend to like the darker one more. So you basically got this sort of thing. And then there we go. Nice core. Can darken that up a little bit. It's a little bit dark, but whatever. We can fill this in a little bit more. You can kind of push and pull it back and forth. Don't forget about your local values. Don't get it too crazy. There. That's honestly good enough in my opinion. So that is rendering a sphere. It's going to have a core shadow. It has a number of parts. It has the lit side. It has the highlight. It has the core shadow. It has the shadowed side. And it has the bounced light coming up. It's got ambient occlusion towards the bottom where it touches the ground. Of course, if it's not touching the ground, if it's high above the ground, you won't get any ambient occlusion. And then the shadow, you have the cast shadow, and you have the ambient occlusion on the ground as well. So I actually want to redo this kind of highlight here. It looks pretty bad now. There we go. So next form, let's talk about the triangular prism. Yes, that is it. Triangular prism? Rectangular prism. I don't remember. Whatever. So this one's actually difficult to make read because it doesn't have three sides. So this is going to be kind of difficult. Like even the cylinder, you can kind of put multiple sides on it. That's that idea of a turning edge, which is like that's on the sphere. It actually has numerous sides because it has like turning edges and stuff. So anyways, on this one, I'm going to just go ahead and fill it in, but you're really only going to get a 1-2 read. So this is actually a pretty weak form to begin with. So let's say my light source is coming from the front-ish, so I'm actually only going to get like this, a 1-2 read, and it's just not a strong shape to paint and get a really strong feel of 3D. So just something to think about. You can even make a form like this with three sides by doing this like that. Now you have 1, 2, and 3, and you'll get a much stronger 1, 2, 3 read on that. So just something to think about. Let me go ahead and just stick this off to the side because that's actually pretty important. All right, let's get a shadow in there. Ooh, here we go. So let's just say, let's just get like literally a shadow like this maybe. And then a new layer underneath, half the black there. Boom, there we go. There's the line work. See how it's just not that strong of a form? That's just what you have to deal with when you have objects with not that many sides. So we'll put a little bit of an ambient occlusion under this. And then we will put a tiny little gradient on this with my gradient tool. And then I'm just going to go ahead and... What? Oh, that's Y. No. Yes, it is Y. Okay. Okay, this lecture right here is literally taking up more than a quarter of my time that I have with you in this free course. So bear with me if we're going really fast. Next form, let's see. This one's actually similar to the box one, but you also have two sides. So again, you're going to have a stronger shape if you're painting this shape and you actually get a nice thing like this going. Then you can have multiple sides. But anyways, basically you're going to be having, let's make this one pretty dark. You're going to have side 1 like this, and then you're going to go halfway to black right here. This is going to have the same problem as the other one, this pyramid. See? Just like that. You turn this off, wherever the line work is. It looks hideous, and we need to clean it up, but it's a start. There we go. Like this. Ambient occlusion. Down here. Shadow. I'm just going to draw this on a new layer below it. And I'm just going to really quickly, my light's on the left. And you can always clean these up as time goes on. There we go. See, that is our next form. You can actually add a little bit of a gradient if you want to this form. Like this kind of thing. You can even add a transitionary shape in here like I did on the box, which I actually spent way too much time on to start. There is that. All right. Next form, ribbon, I think. Yes. Okay, a ribbon is a whole thing. A ribbon is going to work like a compound cylinder. So basically, you're going to get like this sort of thing. And I'm just going to duplicate this over. And you're going to get this sort of thing. So a ribbon, I'm not going to go into crazy detail rendering it, but basically you're going to get if your light is coming down, let's just say from the top, you're going to get a core shadow. Let me make a new layer. You're going to get a core shadow here. You're going to get a core shadow in the groove. Core shadow here, core shadow in the groove, core shadow here, core shadow in the groove. This is kind of like magic, by the way. You're going to get halftone, or your shadow in here, in here, in here. You're going to get a turning edge right here, right here, right here, right here. You're going to have a transition. I'm just going to use my smudge tool here. This is where it turns into magic, honestly. It's so cool. All these get softened out because it's a cylinder. And all of a sudden, you've got an awesome rendered cylinder. And then you can have a highlight even like right here. And it looks so cool. If you want to reinforce this feeling of, I pressed my F key on accident. If you want to have a cool feeling of this kind of like floating in space, you can drag this down and you can put a shadow underneath of it. Like this. Fill this in with your half to black. And now this is going to be floating in space, which is really cool as well. So we'll just do something like that. That is how you render ribbons, which is very fun to do. It's one of my favorite things to render. And there we have it. 33 minutes long, this lecture, but we got through it. All of these forms, this is how you render your primitives. And in the next lecture, we'll be probably doing a little bit more primitive rendering before we jump into like painting and stuff. So anyways, I will see you in the next lecture. Okay, so in this lecture, we are finally jumping into color. I want to talk about 4 different things. So the first one is primary, secondary, and tertiary colors. So our primary colors are yellow, blue, and red. These colors combine to make our secondary colors. So actually, let me move it. That's fine. Okay, so yellow mixed with this. Well, we should honestly saturate that more. So primary colors mix to create this color, green. These 2 colors mix to create this color, purple. And then these 2 colors mix. Photoshop doesn't have very good color things to create this color, orange. It's not really quite the same as mixing real paint, but it's kind of close-ish, so whatever. Okay, and now we have our primary, we have our secondary, and then our tertiary colors are the in-betweens. So we're going to have primary, 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 secondary, secondary, and secondary. And then we're going to have our tertiary, which are mixed by mixing a primary and a secondary. So, right, like this and that, and it creates like a warm green, which is this color in here, see? And then you mix the primary with the secondary, and that's what you end up getting there. So that is our colors, and that's kind of how they're created. But what I like to focus on more, this is more important to me as a digital painter, making good-looking paintings, is color temperature. So this line splitting the middle right here separates warm colors from cool colors. So this is super important as a painter. Warm on this side and cool on this side. So warm and cool have a contrast between each other, and color is actually really relative. So, for example, if I have a cool color and then I want to warm it up just a little bit, there's that. But if I have a, let's see, if I have this color feels warm in here. But now if I have this color and then I have another color inside of here, now this is the cool color and this is the warm color. So that's really powerful because that allows you to really control things inside of your painting. So blue becoming warmer, right? You'll start adding red and you'll start getting this sort of color coming in here. You start getting this more color in here like that. And yellow, if you want to add some yellowish right here, and then you want to start adding a cool color, you can start adding some blue. You can add some more blue, and this will start getting cooler and cooler. Now, if you add opposite colors to each other, so for example, this color and this color, what you tend to get is you tend to get a lot more desaturated of a color. So in here, notice how this saturation goes down. It'll generally create this brown. So let's say you choose another one and then I want to add the opposite. Look, it's almost that same-ish brown color in there. See, it's very, very similar. It becomes more of a desaturated kind of brownish color. So anyways, color temperature, let's talk a little bit more about it. So light, remember how I said a long time ago that light can have color to it. Well, light can be warm and cool. So let's go ahead and draw a box really quick like this. Let's just use a bit bigger of a brush. Light has color. Okay. right? So let's say that this is kind of a grayish box, and we already learned how to render earlier. So we got this, and now we got this color halfway to black, right about here. Here is our shadow side. And then our secondary side, which is between these two, right about here. So let's go ahead and add this onto the side this time instead. So now we have this box, and it is rendered with our kind of half to black principle. So let's take this and let's bring it down here. And let's say we have a warm light. So I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to have the top the same value, but I'm actually going to make it warm. So I'm going to add like an orangish color to this. Now I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to add a cool shadow. So I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to maybe take a tiny bit of blue at the same value, just a very desaturated blue, and I'm going to come in here, and I have colored in that side of the box. And then I can leave this gray if I want, or I can just add the tiniest bit of maybe like blue as well in there. Doesn't really matter too much. So this box now has this kind of color temperature applied. And what I like to do is I like to get pretty crazy with this sort of thing. So I'm going to show an example of some artwork that I do. And you'll notice that when I paint, say, for example, this grass, look at this. It's very yellow, very warm. As soon as I go into the shadow, boom, slides all the way down to almost like a blue, very, very cool gray color. Same with even this tree right here. Very yellow, very warm orange. Boom, desaturated. So adding that gray desaturates it a lot. Even this red barrel here, very red, very warm. Boom, drops all the way down to this kind of violet-ish color. So that's what I like to do with color temperature, especially when I want this nice stylized look. I really drop that down. Here's another example, very orange, and boom, dropped all the way down in saturation, very low. So that leads into my next point, which is gray. How do you use gray? Well, gray is a relative color. We take blue, we take orange, and we take gray. Complete zero saturation. I chuck this gray in here and in here. This gray looks cool compared to this orange, but this gray looks warm next to this blue. So if I take this gray and I start adding it to this blue right here, this is actually warming up the blue. And if I take this gray and I add it to this orange here, this is actually warming up this orange. And what you can do is you can then transition to other colors through gray. And this is actually a really powerful principle, because a lot of the time you won't transition directly to another color. You will transition through gray in order to get there. And that's really important. So gray can actually be the most beautiful color if used correctly, in my opinion. I like all colors. So, and then there's color relationships. So I'm not really going to go into too much detail on this, because there's a lot of information on it out there online and stuff, but basically the opposite color on the color wheel. So for example, if I make a new layer here, I'm just going to draw through the middle, and I'm going to make this little arrow here. And then we got this. So these are complementary colors: green and red, blue and orange, yellow and purple, yellowish orange and purple, right? These are complementary colors, so they tend to complement each other, and they really vibrate together. So there's actually this app that I like to have in, this plugin in Photoshop that goes to complementary and tertiary, and this comes up, triadic. So this is triadic, not tertiary, sorry. But basically you get this, and then there's this one right here as well, and then there's this one. There's a whole bunch of them. There's a ton of these. I'm not going to go over all of them. There's analogous. There's tetradic. I don't even really know what that one is, honestly. Triadic, complementary. But it basically chooses the opposite color for you, so it makes it simple. That's called Coolorus, Coolorus. It costs a little bit of money, but I honestly love it. I like it because I can have my HSB sliders right here, and also a hue cube up at the same time, and also a color wheel. That's like the only thing that I use it for, honestly. Just makes it easy when I'm painting a lot. But anyway, so on this one, let's go ahead and make a cool, right? So let's make a cool cube like this. Top is this color. Maybe the side is still gray. I might actually want to lighten that up a little bit. And then this side down here could be warm. So the shadow is warm on this one, and the light is cool. So that'd be like a cool light source, like that. So you could have that sort of thing. Maybe I'll desaturate this a little bit more. There we go. So, you know, box A and box B. B has a warm light source and a cool shadow. A has a cool light source and a warm shadow. I like to do that sort of thing. So again, going back to before, if I wanted to draw like a tree, I might come in here and drop in a really warm, right? Maybe I'll make this like a cylinder or something. And then I'll have a really warm light source like this. And then I'll start coming in here and really desaturating this down with the shadow side like this. So that might end up being what my tree looks like if I'm rendering it like a cylinder. Like that sort of thing, right? And I could even come in here and I could stick blue, and I could just lightly press, and that'll just shift those colors towards blue in there. But you notice that it's not even actually blue over here. It's because when you add a little bit of cool, it will cancel it out, and it'll make it a little bit more desaturated. So I could do the same thing with some grass or something. I could come in here, have a very warm little very little warm block of grass like this, warmly lit. On the shadowed side, come way down here, you can have this kind of thing. And then on the secondary side, you could just have like maybe something more like that. This, you can make it really warm and really saturated. And then on this side, you can have that nice blue feel. And if you added a grass texture and everything to this, it would feel a lot more like a grass block. Like that. So that's how I tend to handle color theory and all of that sort of thing. I just remember color is relative, and I like exaggerating my colors. So what I also like to do is I like to vary my colors too. I'll push this a little bit there. I'll push this a little bit there. I'll push this, cooler a little bit. So this will really start to vary your colors and vary your hue a little bit as well. And this will really start to feel pretty nice. I like to call it like nice juicy colors. So down in here, might vary this just a little bit. Right, I might be doing that a little much, and it would look better with kind of a grass texture as well. Like this sort of thing in there. You get some nice dark stuff down in there. Like this sort of thing. Get some nice overlaps going on in there. And you'll see that very quickly we can get that nice sort of grass texture feel in there. Maybe I won't add that too much there, just a little bit. There, see? And then if I wanted to add maybe a little block at the bottom of like dirt or something, I could do Well, maybe not quite that. Maybe more like this. See? That's how I would generally paint stuff. And then I could add some, you know, flowers, maybe purple flowers or something popping out. Maybe some stems. See? That's how I would draw a grass block, and then I'd refine it more and color it more, but using color theory and like my understanding of it. So anyways, that is going to be it for color theory, and I will see you in the next lecture. So here we are in this final lecture of this course. I went ahead and started this sketch just to save a little bit of time. It's basically just a cube or a block that's been stretched and morphed and stuff a little bit. So I'm just going to be drawing this out, and then we will go ahead and paint it as well. So this is going to be our final assignment here. Not going to get too detailed, and then I want to figure out my lighting and everything and just finish this up. I need something attractive for the thumbnail of this video as well. So maybe we'll be able to use this. Maybe we'll put a nail coming out like this. And that should be good enough. I'm going to lower the opacity, and I'm just going to come down here. And we're going to start painting with maybe an orange-ish color like this. And I'm just going to really use my lasso tool and come in here and just select sort of this whole area roughly. I'm going to avoid the nail. There we go. There we go. And I'm going to probably draw that nail in separately. I'm going to choose maybe that sort of thing. There we go. We'll put that nail in separately. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to clip it down. And I'm really just doing this for speed. I'm going to use a nice color. Maybe a nice color like this. And we're going to color in sort of this area here. Darker in this part right there. I'm using kind of that cool, warm color theory that I was talking about before, but I'm really trying to stay true to the design of this. Now, I'm going to come up here and go a little bit more yellowish, and we're going to have a plane facing up right here. So I'm thinking my light is coming in from the top left. So I'm just going to go ahead and say my light is coming in from this angle. So I get that nice 1, 2, 3 read. Come back down here to this. And then I'm going to get this nice pretty edge along here like that. Maybe a little bit more saturated. I really kind of want that edge. And we'll get some of that around here and there as these forms kind of morph around. I really want to make a nice attractive looking piece. Get some nice dark in there. Now we can start working on some of this stuff up here. Maybe I'll add something like this. Maybe. How about I do this? I'm going to add some dark in here. Then I'm going to take a nice light color and sort of circle it around. Yeah. There we go. I like that sort of shape. And I'm trying not to zoom in too much, honestly. There. Now, this course does not talk at all about design, which is huge. So maybe I'll make another free course on that in the future. There's just way too much to cover with design to be able to stick it in a 2-hour-long course like this. Yeah, I kind of like how this is going. I kind of want a piece right there. And then, yeah, I kind of like that. So I'm really just sculpting in my mind. I'm going, what's facing the light? What's facing away from the light? Really sculpting this stuff out. Right, that's facing the light. Maybe something back here is facing away from the light a little bit. Like that sort of thing. I can even just go ahead and make a new layer and put it below this one and just get a bit of a drop shadow underneath of this thing. So we would probably have something that looks like this. I really got to watch the time here. Yeah, maybe something like that. Get it darker down in here closer to the wood. And then, yeah, that'll do for now. Let's work on this nail a little bit. Where is that? Here it is. Grab a nice light value. Lock that. Oops, I accidentally pressed F again. I always do that. There we go. I should honestly disable that key with how much I do it. There we go. There's that nail. Maybe we'll go ahead and add a specular to this nail, depending on how shiny it is. What I might even go ahead and do is select this whole area, make a new layer, put it below, and I might even just maybe add a greenish background. No. I'm not sure. Maybe I'll keep it gray for now. I could add a bit of a darkish. That could work. I would definitely have to change this to probably a multiply. Maybe lower that opacity a little bit. I don't know. I don't like that. I'll keep it like this for now. Get that nail. Let's make a nice shadow of that nail. There we go. Maybe something like that. Now we can really start working on these details. I hope I don't have to time-lapse any of this. If I run out of time, I might have to. I'm trying to keep everything completely live. Now let's go ahead and do some of that magic we were talking about earlier. Mixing up the colors a bit. Get some worms in there. A little bit more saturated. Like this. A little bit less saturated. Maybe some more reds. Kind of go along the wood. I'm kind of liking how this is turning out. I really like this. I kind of feel like maybe I'll try to add a little bit of a focal point up in here. So my focal point, a design principle, would be to add the highest area of contrast and color around the area that I want everybody to look at. So maybe I want everybody to look at this area back in here. And then I'll add some more Yeah, that's kind of fun. Let's add a secondary edge to this. Yeah, like that. Maybe we could just have a little bit of that facing down there. Yeah, let's get nice and dark and red in here. And maybe we can even have some nice that going on. Kind of like that. I could even have a couple pieces of wood coming off like this and coming back in here. And then we can draw the bottom of them, and then they'll connect back to this. Could even have a little piece coming off like, maybe not so much. There we go. I could even do something like this. Why don't I cut this out here? Yeah, I kind of like that. It's kind of fun. Kind of sculpting that out and really building out some pieces. Let's get some nice dark values in there. Yeah, that's kind of fun. Come in here and maybe add some pattern. Like that sort of thing. I like how this is looking. Yeah, that's kind of fun. Maybe come in here and break this up a little bit. Now I kind of want to, I'll merge all this together, and I kind of want to refine my silhouette a little bit. Make it, get some nice silhouette going on in there. I'm going to turn off my line work at this point and just work on the painting. And now I'm going to really refine this silhouette and make it look good. The silhouette is definitely one of the most important. There we go. Maybe do something like that. Yeah, I kind of like that. It's kind of fun. Let's get some details going on inside of this area back here. I'm thinking maybe shapes like this. I'm really thinking about the form here and how it maybe wraps over and around, then kind of tucks back under like that. Kind of like that. And then we can get some nice dark in there. And there. Let's go ahead and cut maybe some of that out to give some interesting silhouette. I don't want it too light. I want to keep it within that sort of dark. Maybe I'll add a little bit of an edge like this. Yeah, that's feeling pretty good. Maybe I'll actually make this whole thing kind of like a lump coming out of the side like that. I like this. that's pretty nice. Yeah, I think that's pretty fun. I don't mind it. Yeah, I think we'll stop there. So that, using our perspective principles, our rendering principles of light, I think that'll be good for a sort of final little demo for this quick course. And then this will give me something to put promo-wise. Maybe I'll even have this come up. Yeah, that'll be fine. All right, we'll stick with that there. So in this lecture, I've actually time-lapsed it because I ran out of time. So I'm just painting in a background right now. I'm basically getting a cool to warm transition from the sky to the foreground, because I'm planning on adding sort of a tree line and some mountains in the background. So I'm lightening the sky a little bit here, and I'm adding some extra saturation. I'm just adjusting these colors, really. Now what I'm doing is painting in some of the masses of the trees, because I'm going to design them out before I detail them. So that's how I tend to work, is I will make the big masses and paint those in and see if I like it by kind of blurring my eyes and looking at it from far away. So I didn't zoom in or out at all during this section, so it doesn't get kind of crazy because it's time-lapsed. Just indicating the dark areas between and beneath the trees and the light hitting on it. This is kind of your general like form rendering, almost like very simplified spheres, and putting in some lines that indicate the tree kind of trunks going up. So just really designing out these shapes in there before I get into more detail. I'm actually going to push all of this back later on. So I'm breaking up the ground, adding some bushes and stuff, kind of an indication, making a better transition from the background to the foreground. Now I'm deciding to add some flowers and stuff into the background to kind of just make a little bit of more interesting colors, right? So softening that shadow a little bit. And I'm going to put in these big graphical shapes in the foreground to kind of indicate some grass. I don't feel like spending all the time on painting out grass. I kind of want this to be more stylized or cartoony. Putting some silhouettes of grass in just to kind of break that out and create some overlaps. Overlaps is one of the best ways to create depth in a painting. So overlapping dark with light and overlapping light with dark, back and forth. So I kind of mess around with these shapes for a little bit to get them working. Adding some mountains in the background, just generally big masses to see how I like them. And I'm going to add some clouds in front as well, just using white. So the mountains are generally very blue on a nice day like this. Here's that fog that I'm adding just to push everything back because I want my focus to be the wood. So, and that is it for this, and thank you for watching this course.